While I was overseas on a business trip, my phone buzzed with a midnight call from my husband, Elliot. His voice was sharp and emotionless. "Hey, I want you to divorce me," he said bluntly. For a moment, time seemed to stop. I froze, the words hanging heavy in the air. "Huh?" was all I could manage to say. I had always known, somewhere deep down, that this day might come, but never in my wildest imagination did I think he'd deliver the blow while I was thousands of miles away, unable to even look him in the eye. "What do you mean? Can you explain properly?" I asked, trying to make sense of his cold announcement. Elliot let out a derisive laugh that sent chills down my spine. "You might not have noticed, but I've got a mistress. She's younger, prettier, and, well, we've got a child together," he said, his words dripping with unapologetic confidence. I stayed silent, my mind racing, but he wasn't done yet. "So, I want you to divorce me so I can live with my mistress and our love child," he continued, as if this was just another casual conversation. "Oh, and by the way, I've already sold the house and the car." His declaration was final, his tone expectant. He was waiting for my reaction, perhaps a dramatic outburst or desperate plea, but instead I gave him a simple, short reply. "Okay." There was a beat of silence on the other end. "Huh?" Elliot muttered, clearly caught off guard. Did he expect me to break down crying and make a scene? That was naive thinking. I had long since steeled myself for this, so something like this wouldn't shake me. Several days later, when I returned home, there was a frantic Elliot waiting at the airport. "My name is Naomi. I'm a 34-year-old housewife. I was born and raised in an ordinary middle-class family, but I attended French classes since elementary school and loved learning the language. I excelled in English during middle school and even experienced a home stay in France during high school. Before I knew it, I had developed a dream of working for an international company, so I enrolled in the business department of a prestigious university. During my studies, I also studied abroad in France, steadily climbing the stairs toward my dream. I worked incredibly hard during job hunting, and although I didn't get into my first choice company, I received an offer from my second choice, an international firm. At that time, both I and my family were overjoyed, and my sister said, as expected of Naomi, "You're a sister to be proud of. Take care of yourself and do your best when you start working." I nodded, grateful for my precious family who had supported me. Once I started working, the job was more demanding than I had imagined. While the company itself was considered employee-friendly, the quality standards were high, and in my early 20s, when I was still inexperienced, I often had to work overtime. However, I had wonderful supervisors and colleagues who always supported me, and above all, I found fulfillment in the job I had always wanted. After several years of dedicating myself to work, my efforts were recognized, and I gradually began to be entrusted with more important tasks. Friends often told me things like, "You're on the fast track to being a successful businesswoman," and "You're really cool, such a strong woman." Though people saw me that way, I actually had a weakness for cute things. I would collect merchandise of my favorite characters and sleep with stuffed animals. Although I had given up on having pets due to my demanding job, I often spent my days off alone at cat cafes to relax. While I maintained a sharp persona at work and didn't show this side to others, I think I had an especially strong desire to be comforted due to my busy work schedule. As I entered my late 20s, people around me started getting married. Many of my friends were having children. When invited to friends' weddings, I would be told, "You should get married soon too." But I could only respond with, "I'm too busy with work." I couldn't develop romantic feelings for men at work or business partners, and I had no opportunities to meet anyone. Am I destined to remain single? However, at that time I thought that was fine. Living for work wasn't so bad. One day I was invited to yet another friend's wedding. I attended as usual, applauding the couple, but I felt somewhat anxious. I had already passed 30. If I wanted to get married, I needed to start looking for someone soon. The wedding reception continued at a bar venue, and I was sitting alone at the counter, drinking. While watching the excited participants and the shyly smiling newlyweds from afar, someone suddenly spoke to me. "Are you alone? May I sit next to you?" I was startled because the voice was so lovely. It was what you'd call a nice voice. Yes, of course. As I answered, I looked at the man who sat down next to me. He was about the same height as me. I'm tall for a woman, and he looked younger than me. His face was ordinary, in a good way, somewhat different from what his voice suggested. Are you here for the wedding? I answered. Yes, I'm a friend of the bride. I'm a high school friend of the groom. Would you like to drink together? I nodded at his words, and we started talking over drinks. Wow, you work at that international company. I know about it. That's amazing. To me, just a salaryman at a small company, you're like someone from another world. The man who introduced himself as Elliot was easy to talk to. We ended up exchanging contact information before parting and started meeting privately after that. Elliot was 2 years younger than me. He worked in sales at a small company. He had a gentle and calm personality, plus he was a good listener and good at giving compliments. I really enjoyed talking with him. After several dates, Elliot confessed to me, and I happily accepted. Although Elliot's annual income was less than a third of mine, I didn't mind at all at the time. As we continued dating, I started to find Elliot adorable. If I had thought of him as a cool or dependable, I might have become disillusioned at some point, but since he was cute, I could forgive minor things. I found the younger Elliot endearing, as he always tried his best, and when he would say things like, "I want to eat your home cooking," I would happily comply. After about a year and a half of dating, Elliot presented me with a ring and said, "I love how you're always so cool, but sometimes cute too. If you'd like, I want you to marry me." Though surprised, I happily accepted the ring. Thank you, Elliot. Let's take care of each other as husband and wife. Elliot jumped for joy, saying yes, and I smiled at the sight. After that, we went to meet each other's families to announce our marriage. Elliot's parents were kind, simple people who blessed our marriage. My family was generally supportive too, telling Elliot, "Please take good care of our daughter." My sister, who was already married, quietly told me, "He seems like just the type you'd choose, with your weakness for cute things. But don't spoil your husband too much, okay?" I laughed at my sister's words and replied, "I know." And so, life together with Elliot began. I decided to buy a condominium when we got married. It was a big purchase that required courage, but I thought it would be better for the future. I chose a slightly larger property in case we had children. I thought our sweet life together was about to begin. However, I was about to face harsh reality. Elliot could hardly do any housework. He had lived with his parents until marriage and relied on his mother for housework, so I thought it couldn't be helped and told him, "Elliot, now that we're married, let's share the housework. If you don't know how, I'll teach you." When I said this, Elliot frowned. "Eh? Now that we're married, shouldn't you do the housework?" I replied firmly, "No, I have a demanding job. It would be troublesome if you can't even handle housework. Come on, get up, I'll teach you how to use the washing machine." I drilled the basics of housework into the reluctant Elliot. However, Elliot continued to slack off on housework. Although he started doing cleaning and laundry, everything was half done, and I ended up having to redo it. His cooking was hopeless, and I managed by doing meal prep. I tried not to be too harsh with Elliot to avoid discouraging him. Instead, I would praise him even for half-done work. It was a strategy of encouragement. However, Elliot took advantage of this and became increasingly negligent with housework. Finally, unable to bear it anymore, I told Elliot, "Listen, Elliot, stop relying on me so much. Learn to do housework properly. I'm busy with work and have business trips, so you need to be able to handle things yourself, right?" Elliot made a sullen face. "What's with you? You've changed since we got married, always nagging. You earn good money, so if you're going to complain so much, why don't you just outsource the housework?" I was dumbfounded. Even if I earned more than others my age, money would run out if we spend it carelessly. However, no matter how many times we discussed it, Elliot wouldn't do the housework. One day, about a year after our marriage, I came home to find Elliot looking pale in the living room. "Elliot, what's wrong? You look terrible." When I asked, Elliot began to explain. "Actually, my company is going bankrupt due to the recession. I'll be unemployed next month." I couldn't help but exclaim, "What?" Although overtime had increased over the past 6 months, I had no idea Elliot's company was in such financial trouble. "So, what are you going to do?" About finding new work? I'll think about that later. I'm tired and emotionally drained, so let me take my time. I decided to leave Elliot alone. I thought there was no need to rush, as he said. However, once Elliot's company went bankrupt and he no longer had to go to work, he spent all day playing video games. Even when I came home late, no housework had been done, and all I would see was Elliot's back as he was absorbed in video games. This continued for several months, and I gradually became irritated. "Hey, Elliot, haven't you rested enough? Isn't it time to work?" But Elliot answered, "Well, I want to think carefully about my next job. Come to think of it, at my previous job, I was just being exploited. Next time I want a job where I can, achieve self-realization or something like that." Although I wanted to say, what nonsense, I couldn't force an unwilling Elliot to work, so I ended up taking care of him even after his unemployment benefits ran out. One day I sarcastically said to Elliot, who was absorbed in gaming, "If you like games so much, why don't you try streaming? You might be able to earn some pocket money." Elliot's eyes lit up. "I see. As expected of Naomi, you're smart. I'll try streaming. I have a good feeling about this." I wondered if it was good that Elliot, who had only been lazing around until now, showed some motivation. "Then buy me a PC and equipment for streaming." I was surprised by his, "Huh?" But Elliot continued naturally, "I don't have any proper savings. I'm serious about this, so please." I reluctantly bought what Elliot asked for. Even if he said he would become a streamer, it couldn't be that easy. I naively thought that once Elliot saw reality, he would want to work seriously. However, a few months later, things took an unexpected turn. Surprisingly, Elliot became popular as a game streamer, and started ranking in charts. Looking at online reactions, there were positive comments like, "His voice is nice," and "It's funny how bad he is at games," and he seemed to be popular with both men and women. By the way, Elliot partially hid his face and didn't disclose that he was married. "See? I'm a man who can succeed when I try. Finally, the world has recognized my worth." Elliot was triumphant. He showed no gratitude to me for buying the equipment and supporting him until he became successful. "Elliot, I'm glad you're successful, but could you contribute some of your streaming earnings to our household expenses?" Since Elliot's unemployment benefits had ended some time ago, he hadn't been contributing to household expenses. Naturally, I thought he should contribute now that he was earning, so I confronted him directly. You can manage the living expenses with just your earnings, so I don't need to contribute my money, right? Let's keep our finances separate." I was stunned by these words, but Elliot really did keep all his streaming earnings for himself. By this time, Elliot had lost all the sincerity he had during our dating period and had become completely dependent on me. By the way, I bought a car around this time. The luxury car I bought on loan was only driven on weekends, but I treasured it like a prized possession. "Hey, let me drive your car too." When Elliot said this one day, I asked, "You only stream from home. You don't need a car for work, right?" But Elliot persisted, saying, "We're married, so it's fine." I ended up giving him the car keys. After that, Elliot started going out freely during weekdays when I wasn't around. His popularity as a streamer was skyrocketing, and by then he had gained many followers as a popular streamer. His private life became flashier, and he started dressing in designer brands. I was sad about how much Elliot had changed. However, thinking we were still husband and wife, I continued this life for several years. As our marriage entered its 4th year, I was entrusted with important positions at work and had more overseas business trips. Sometimes I would be away from home for anywhere from a few days to 3 weeks, but when I returned, all that waited for me was our home turned into a garbage dump. Elliot stayed locked in his room, streaming all day. He still depended on me completely for daily life. There was almost no conversation between us as husband and wife, and I started wondering, why am I still married to Elliot? I began gathering evidence for divorce and making preparations. One day I was scheduled for a 2-week overseas business trip. "Elliot, I'm going overseas again tomorrow, so see you later," I called out to him, but Elliot didn't respond and kept fiddling with his phone. Then I boarded the plane and spent my days working at my destination. However, on the 10th night, I received a phone call from Elliot. "Hello, Elliot. Consider the time difference. It's midnight here." As I said this with sleepy eyes, Elliot dropped a bombshell. "Hey, Naomi, I want you to divorce me." I froze, saying, "Huh?" I had expected this would come, but I never thought he'd say it while I was on an overseas business trip. "What do you mean? Can you explain properly?" Elliot laughed through his nose. "You might not have noticed, but I've got a mistress. She's younger and prettier than you. We even have a child together." When I remained silent, Elliot continued, "So, I want you to divorce me so I can live with my mistress and our love child. I've already sold the house and car." To Elliot, who was waiting expectantly for my response after his bold declaration, I gave a short reply. "Okay." "Huh," Elliot muttered. Did he expect me to break down crying and make a scene? That was naive thinking. I had long since steeled myself for this, so something like this wouldn't shake me. "You want to divorce me, right? Fine. There's a filled-out divorce paper in the living room drawer, so go ahead and submit it." When I said this matter-of-factly, Elliot declared defiantly, "You had divorce papers ready. Your preparation helps." "Well, this is. Goodbye, then. Live miserably as a woman abandoned by her husband." Trying not to laugh, I replied, Yes. Well, I'm going back to sleep. Goodbye." Then I hung up unilaterally and blocked Elliot's calls. I called my sister and asked her for a favor, then slept soundly until morning. The next day, I threw myself back into work and worked diligently until the final day. Finally, it was time to return home. The business class seat provided by the company was comfortable, and I fell asleep again. I slept well. I shouldn't have jet lag and can get back to normal life. After waking up refreshed with the plane's landing, I stretched and got off the plane. After collecting my luggage at the airport and heading toward the lobby exit, someone came rushing toward me shouting, "Hey, Naomi!" It was Elliot, with a frenzied look on his face. "Oh, why are you here? I don't remember asking for a ride." When I said this, Elliot started ranting frantically. "What have you done? The car, the house. Because of you, I backed away from his unusual behavior. "I don't understand what you're trying to say. Can I go now? I'm tired." As I tried to walk past Elliot while yawning, he blocked my path. "Wait a minute. Listen to me." Since Elliot was shouting, I stopped. Let me explain in order. First, I submitted the divorce papers after that. "I see." I gave casual responses while fiddling with my phone, not even looking at Elliot. "Are you listening?" Then, when I returned home to meet with the real estate agent about selling the house, there was a lock on the outside of the door and I couldn't get in. Then, when I tried to go to the other place, there was an anti-theft lock on the car's tires and I couldn't drive. I tried calling you, but you wouldn't answer. You blocked my calls. At this point, I sighed. "Yes, I did block your calls, but what about it?" Elliot started stomping his feet in rage. "Did you put the lock on the house and the tire locks too? How did you do it when you were overseas?" To this I casually answered, "I asked my sister to do it." Elliot's eyes widened. "Your sister?" "Yes. You said you sold the house and car, right? But when my sister checked, they were still fine. I guess you were just bluffing about selling them, probably just at the stage of getting estimates from agents, right?" When I said this, Elliot's face turned red again. "Well, that's true, but it was just about to be sold. Then, because of you, I couldn't help but look exasperated. No, you couldn't have sold them anyway. Both the house and car are in my name, and all the documents needed for sale are at my parents' house." Elliot's face went blank with a, "Did you think just anyone could sell a house or car by saying I'm selling this without being the registered owner? Of course, they need to verify the legitimate owner, and there's paperwork to be done, right?" He hadn't even thought about this, and Elliot was opening and closing his mouth like a fish. "During our marriage, you always dumped all the complicated paperwork on me." "That's why you don't even know such common sense." When I said this with disgust, Elliot's eyes bulged. "If you knew they couldn't be sold, why did you put locks on the house and car? Because of you. I couldn't get into the house or use the car, and it was terrible." Sighing, I said, "Who would want to let someone who made a mistress and wants a divorce into their house? Same with the car. Since they're in my name, I just did it for security." Elliot glared at me with bloodshot eyes. "What's with that look? I don't deserve to be glared at just because you couldn't freely sell my property. You're really not cute at all. That's what I hated about you, acting like you can do everything by yourself, being so uppity for a woman." I replied calmly, "Oh, is that so? Then you shouldn't have married me in the first place." Elliot snorted. "It was obviously for your money. The fact that you worked at an international company and earned well, that was the only merit in marrying you." There was clear malice in Elliot's attempt to hurt me, but it didn't affect me at all. Come to think of it, there was no merit in me marrying you either. When I said this thoughtfully, Elliot became enraged. "Don't act so high and mighty. I'm going to abandon you. My mistress is hundreds of times cuter than you, and she even had my child. Aren't you frustrated? She's superior to you as a woman." I couldn't help but smile slightly. "Superior to me, huh? When Elliot said what?" I took a photo out of my bag. "Is this your mistress?" The photo showed an attractive woman who appeared to be in her early 20s. Elliot's eyes darted back and forth when he saw it. "You knew about Sharon, then?" I smiled sweetly and explained. "You're not the only one who wanted a divorce. I've been gathering evidence for divorce for a while now. You're so careless. Didn't you know that the dashcam records interior footage too?" Elliot suddenly turned pale, but I continued. "Once I knew when you were meeting her from the dashcam footage, the rest was easy. I just had to hire a private investigator to gather evidence." The mistress was quickly identified. I was surprised to find out she was already pregnant, though. When I said this, Elliot was stunned, but soon regained his composure. "Don't do anything to her. She's going through a lot after giving birth, and she's young, so she doesn't have money. Besides, she didn't know I was married." At this point, I exaggerated, lowering my eyebrows. "You're defending her so strongly. You must really love Sharon, of course. She's pure, cute, and my soulmate. I'll protect her and our child no matter what." In front of the heavily breathing Elliot, I played a video. It was dashcam footage from inside the car. It showed Elliot driving my car with a heavily pregnant Sharon in the passenger seat. "Thank you for taking me on a drive today. The food was delicious, too." When Sharon said this in a sweet voice, Elliot's face turned smug. "You're good at saying thank you. Good girl, I want to marry you soon." Then Sharon made a pouty face. "Really? Hurry up and divorce that old hag and become my husband, okay? The baby's coming soon. Just wait a little longer. I'll take care of everything while she's on her overseas business trip. Then we can live happily together. Me, you, and this child. We can live luxuriously with the money from selling the house and car." After playing that much, I said, "Sharon clearly knew you were married, didn't she?" Elliot was pale. To him, I dropped another bombshell. "By the way, what's this about being pure?" Elliot shouted, "What are you trying to say? Here's the result of investigating Sharon. Take a good look." As I scattered multiple photos on the floor, Elliot's face grew increasingly pale as he looked down at them. "What is this? Who are these men?" The photos showed evidence of Sharon's relationships with multiple men. There were pictures of her arm in arm with different men entering hotels, and even getting prenatal checkups with a man who wasn't Elliot. That's who Sharon really is. She specifically targeted famous streamers to have relationships with. I'm sure you started as streamer and fan too, right? Elliot was frozen, unable to speak. He fell to his knees, clutching Sharon's photo, looking dazed. Then, I told him in a seemingly sympathetic voice, "You're something else, planning to raise a child who might not even be yours." Elliot muttered, like he was talking in his sleep. "No, Sharon said I was the only one. This can't be happening." I looked down at Elliot expressionlessly. I spoke to Elliot, who had become like an empty shell. "Can I go now? We're already strangers, right? There's nothing more to talk about, is there?" Then Elliot snapped to attention and started yelling at me. "If you hadn't shown me this, I could have stayed happy. How vindictive are you? Because of you, I can't trust anything anymore." I couldn't help but look exasperated. "That's not my problem. Do you even understand what you're saying?" "Whatever. Even if I divorce you and break up with Sharon, I'm still happy. I have over 2 million followers as a streamer, and I'm earning more than you now. Too bad for you. You're losing a famous streamer as a husband. Serves you right." At this point, I smiled sweetly and said, Why don't you check your phone? Elliot said aha and took out his phone. His face grew increasingly pale. What's this? Over 1,000 notifications. What's going on? After checking his phone, Elliot looked at me with a horrified expression. Naomi, you didn't... Then I gave my biggest smile of the day and told him, yes, I exposed everything online, that you were married, that you had a mistress and a love child, and how terribly you treated me. Elliot let out a scream that echoed through the airport lobby. People around started staring. Now Elliot truly lost his composure. What have you done to me? My status that I built up, my followers, I'm getting messages saying you're a worse man and a betrayed, a non-stop. I playfully held up my smartphone. To such an Elliot. By the way, this scene is being live-streamed right now. Wow, over 1 million viewers. Elliot frantically tried to grab my phone, but it was too late. His ugly remarks and his frantic breakdown had already been exposed to the public. As Elliot started rolling around on the airport lobby floor, I slipped past him and headed lightly toward the taxi stand. Afterward, Elliot faced severe backlash online. Originally, he had streamed under the persona of a single man with a nice voice and good looks, somewhat clumsy but with a nice personality, and had many female fans. However, just the revelation that he was married shocked his female fans who felt betrayed. On top of that, having a mistress and love child led male fans to criticize him as unfaithful, adding fuel to the fire. The scandal was packed with juicy details, hiding his married status, betraying his wife with a mistress and love child, and then finding out the child might not even be his. Even people who hadn't known Elliot before found it entertaining, and he became the talk of the internet. Although Elliot posted an appropriately worded apology on social media, the backlash didn't subside. His subscriber count kept dropping until he was finally forced to suspend his activities. A while later, one day when I was leaving my office building after work, Elliot was waiting for me. He came to me in tears, begging, I can't stream anymore and I can't even walk outside. Naomi, help me. You're the only one I truly love. Let's be husband and wife again. To Elliot, who said such nonsense, I stated, if you keep stalking me, I'll call the police. I haven't seen Elliot since then. I heard through the grapevine that the child Sharon gave birth to really wasn't. After much drama over this, Elliot and Sharon broke up. I mercilessly demanded compensation from both of them. Elliot paid with what little savings he had, and Sharon paid with money borrowed from her parents. By the way, Sharon tried to pressure another streamer who was actually the father of her child into marriage, but was rejected. Now she's reportedly back at her strict parents' home raising the child. I hope that innocent child grows up healthy. As for Elliot, after paying the compensation to me, he was completely broke, and then the companies he had done tie-ups with demanded damages for harming their image. With no one to rely on and no savings, Elliot tried to turn to his family, but his decent parents declared they were cutting ties with him. Thus, having lost his status, honor, money, and even family to rely on, Elliot is now reportedly living like a broken man in a rundown apartment. Even knowing everything that had happened, I couldn't bring myself to feel any sympathy for him. As for me, I was back to being single, strong, independent, and more dedicated to my work than ever. I couldn't even bear the thought of staying in the condo Elliot and I had once shared, so I quickly put it up for sale, eager to close that chapter for good. It turned out that the timing was perfect. Property values had soared over the years, so when the condo sold, I made a significant profit. I also sold the car that Elliot and Sharon had been driving around, a symbol of their new life together, to an acquaintance of mine. With that money, I bought myself a brand new car, a fresh start. In more ways than one. Once the dust had settled, my sister, who had been there for me through it all, looked at me with a proud smile. Good job, Naomi, she said. Think of him like a dog that bit you. Forget about him quickly and move on. And next time, don't pick a guy just because he's cute, okay? Her words hit me like a revelation. This experience had taught me a valuable lesson about myself, about choices, and about what really mattered. As for marriage, I think I'm done. The idea of living for someone else, of living for a relationship, just doesn't suit me anymore. My work fills my days, and I'm content with that. At the moment, I'm living in a sleek single unit in a newly purchased tower apartment. The building even allows pets, and now that my life is settling into a rhythm, I'm planning to adopt a cat, something I've always dreamed of. It feels like the right time to nurture what's mine, to focus on my happiness, and to live each day with intention. From here on out, I'm ready to embrace life fully, appreciating the little things and living positively. Want to follow my journey and dive into more stories like this? Be sure to subscribe to the SoraBook channel. You won't want to miss what's coming up next.